That Tacoma out front? She's yours, son. My dad said using $9,500 he took from me. He thought I was just a plumber who wouldn't notice. What he didn't know was I'd already moved everything. I sat there until I set my son's new truck title on the table, then closed the account in front of him. The look on his face when he realized the money was gone was, I'm 38 years old. I've been a licensed plumber for 15 years. I don't have a corner office or a company car. I drive a work truck with my name on the side, and I come home with grease under my fingernails most nights. My brother-in-law Kyle works in finance button-down shirts, downtown building, the kind of job my father describes to people at church with a specific tone of pride he has never once used for anything I've done. I noticed that a long time ago. I stopped letting it bother me somewhere around year 3. The Martin household reserve was my father's idea. 6 years ago, he sat me down at his kitchen table and told me that the family needed a shared safety net. Emergencies, home repairs, things that come up. He said it made sense for everyone to chip in, and that since I was doing well, maybe I could contribute a little more than the others to start. $1,200 a month. I said yes. I set up the automatic transfer the same week. Joint account, 3 names. Frank Martin, Renee Martin, Jacob Martin. For 6 years, I didn't think much about it. I trusted it the same way I trusted most things in my family without checking closely enough. There was one other thing I did that year that I didn't mention to my father. I opened a second account at a different bank. Just mine. No joint access, no shared login. I'd had a feeling, even then, that it was a good idea to keep something separate. I filed that thought away and didn't act on it for a long time. The favoritism wasn't new. It had been running quietly in the background my entire life, the kind of thing you learn to absorb without naming it. Brandon, Sandra, and Kyle's son, my nephew, had always been the one my parents lit up for. Birthdays, holidays, random Tuesdays. Last Christmas, my father took both boys to the same sporting goods store. I waited outside in the truck. When they came out, Brandon was carrying a $180 jacket. Liam had a $40 one. Nobody said anything. My father was already talking about dinner. Liam didn't say a word on the ride home. He just looked out the window. My kid never complained. He never demanded anything. He watched his cousin get the better version of everything, and he just absorbed it the way kids do when they've already figured out there's no point in asking why. I started paying attention to the account around the same time I started paying attention to that silence. I check the Martin household reserve on the first of every month. It takes about 2 minutes. I log in, confirm the balance, confirm my transfer posted, log out. I've done it for 6 years without finding anything unusual. Until I didn't. It was a Tuesday evening, 11 days before the joint birthday dinner. I was sitting in my work truck in the driveway, still in my uniform, phone in hand. The transfer had posted, but the balance was wrong. Not slightly wrong. Significantly wrong. I scrolled to the transaction history and found a debit I didn't recognize, $9,500, wired to an auto dealership. I sat there for a moment. Then I called my father. He picked up on the third ring. He sounded relaxed. "Hey," I said. "The account. There's a charge, $9,500 to a dealership." "What is that?" There was a short pause. Not guilty. More like mildly inconvenienced, the way someone sounds when they have to explain something obvious. "Oh, that," he said. "Yeah, we chipped in for Brandon's truck. Kyle and Sandra can't swing it right now, and the kid's turning 16. We all pitched, and that's what the account's there for." I didn't say anything. "Jacob, I see," I said. "It's a good truck. Used Tacoma. Good deal. Okay, I'll talk to you about the birthday dinner soon. We're planning something good." I said goodbye and hung up. He had told me about a $9,500 withdrawal from an account I funded for 6 years like it was a footnote. No heads up, no ask, no apology, just, "That's what the account's there for." I opened the full transaction history. Not just October. All 18 months. That's when I stopped checking and started reading. 18 months of transactions. I went through every single one. The $9,500 was the biggest, but it wasn't the only one that didn't belong. 8 months back, there was a $3,000 charge I didn't recognize. Home improvement supplier. I remembered that month my father had mentioned the kitchen remodel in passing, something about new cabinets and a countertop. He told me he and my mother were covering it themselves. I hadn't thought about it again. I was looking at it now. Then, 4 months before that, a payment of $800 to a creditor, no note. I recognized the creditor's name because I'd heard it once before, at a family dinner, in a hushed conversation between my mother and Sandra about Kyle being behind on something. Nobody had mentioned the reserve. Nobody had mentioned my name. I sat with those three numbers for a while. 9,500美元, 3,000美元, 800美元. Total extracted without my knowledge or consent. $13,300. Then I ran the other number. My contributions to the Martin household reserve over the same 18 months, $1,200 a month, every month, without missing one. $21,600. My parents' combined deposits over the same period, which I could see clearly in the transaction log, $4,800. I had funded 82% of an account that had just paid for my nephew's truck, my parents' kitchen, and my brother-in-law's debt. I put the phone down on the passenger seat and stared at the windshield for a minute. Then I picked it back up. I called the dealership, kept it simple, told them I was a family member following up on a recent purchase. The salesperson confirmed the vehicle without much hesitation, a 2019 Toyota Tacoma. She gave me the purchase date, 3 weeks ago. The name on the registration, Brandon. The truck had already been titled. It was done. I didn't confront my father that night. I didn't call my mother. What I did instead was text her casual, no accusation, just a question. Hey mom, that $3,000 from the reserve back in March, was that the kitchen remodel? Her reply came in 11 minutes. Yes, we needed it, and we knew you wouldn't mind. The account is for the family. I read it twice. Then I took a screenshot and set the phone face down on the counter. We knew you wouldn't mind. Not we should have asked. Not we're sorry we didn't loop you in. We knew you wouldn't mind, as if my consent was something they could decide in advance, on my behalf, and file away. As if 6 years of automatic transfers had quietly converted me from a person into a resource. I said nothing to either of them. I had 11 days, a screenshot, a transaction history, and a decision I hadn't made yet. 11 days to figure out what I was going to do with all of it. 4 days after I found the transaction history, my father called to go over the birthday dinner logistics. He was in a good mood. Cheerful, even. He'd already booked the back banquet room at Luigi's White Tablecloths, private space, room for the whole family. He walked me through the plan like he was organizing a company event. Arrival time, seating, cake order, the works. Then he got to the part about cost. We're splitting the venue rental 50-50, he said. You and Kyle, down the middle, $300 each. I let that land for a second. Kyle. The man whose $800 debt had been cleared from the Martin household reserve 4 months ago without so much as a text to me. That Kyle was now my financial equal in this arrangement, $300 each, clean down the middle, as if we were coming from exactly the same place. Sure, I said. Good. And listen, we're doing something special for the boys. You'll see. It's going to be a real night. I knew exactly what something special meant. I'd seen where the money for it came from. I paid my $300 2 days later. I didn't mention the account. I didn't mention the Tacoma. I just paid and said nothing, the same way I had apparently been doing for 6 years without fully understanding what I was paying into. Then Sandra texted the family group chat. She was excited, all caps, exclamation points, the kind of message she sends when she already knows how something ends. She said the dinner was going to be unforgettable, that the boys were going to have the best 16th birthday, that Dad had really outdone himself this time. She sent me a separate message that evening. Dad is so excited about the car thing. Brandon is going to lose his mind, LOL. This is going to be such a good night. That was the whole message. Brandon's name. Brandon's reaction. Brandon's night. Liam's name wasn't in it anywhere. I typed yeah and sent it. That evening, I drove to the bank where I kept my separate account, the backup bank, the one my father didn't know existed. I went inside and sat down with a loan officer. We talked for about 40 minutes. When I got home, Liam was in the kitchen. He asked what was for dinner. I checked the fridge. We had burger stuff. We ate at the kitchen table, and he talked about something at school, and I listened. He had no idea what I was carrying. He had no idea what I'd just arranged. I didn't tell anyone what happened at that bank. Not my mother. Not Sandra. Not even Liam. The night before the dinner, I sat at my kitchen table and laid everything out. Not physically. I didn't spread papers across the floor like a detective. I just opened my phone, pulled up the Notes app, and went through it piece by piece. 4 items. I wanted to be clear on all of them before I walked into that banquet room. The first was the bank records. 18 months of transaction history from the Martin household reserve, screenshots saved and backed up. 3 withdrawals I hadn't authorized. $9,500 to the dealership for Brandon's truck. $3,000 to the home improvement supplier for my parents' kitchen. $800 to Kyle's creditor for a debt I was never told about. $13,300 total gone without a conversation, without a request, without even the courtesy of a heads up after the fact. My contributions over the same period. $1,200 a month, every month, 18 months straight. $21,600 deposited by me. $4,800 by my parents combined. I had funded 82 cents of every dollar in that account. And 82 cents of every dollar they spent from it had gone to someone other than my son. The second item was my mother's text. 11 words. Yes, we needed it and we knew you wouldn't mind. 1 screenshot. Sent voluntarily, unprompted, in response to a neutral question. She hadn't been trapped. She just told me exactly how they saw me as someone whose consent could be assumed because asking felt unnecessary. The third was the vehicle title. Brandon's name, the VIN, the purchase date. A 2019 Toyota Tacoma, registered and done 3 weeks before the birthday dinner. Nothing speculative. The truck existed. My money had paid for most of it. The paperwork said someone else's name. Those 3 items I had assembled over 11 days. The fourth one I had arranged 6 days ago, the evening I drove to the backup bank. I want to tell you what I did there. I bought a truck, a 2018 Toyota Tacoma 1 year older than Brandon's, clean title, well-maintained, good miles. I paid for it in full, out of the account my father didn't know existed. Then I had the title transferred into one name. Liam Martin. It was parked in a storage lot on Moreau Street, 2 miles from Luigi's restaurant. The keys were in a small envelope. That evening, I folded both documents, the bank printout, and Liam's title, slid them into a manila envelope, and put the envelope in the inside pocket of my jacket. I didn't rehearse a speech. I wasn't going to Luigi's to perform. My son was not going to walk away from his own birthday with a $10 McDonald's gift card while his cousin drove home in a truck I had paid for. That was the only thing I was certain about. If my father kept it quiet, I would keep it quiet. But if he stood up at that table and did what I knew he was going to do, I was going to reach into my jacket. I was ready either way. The morning of the dinner, I dropped Liam at his friend's place around noon. He looked at me sideways when I came downstairs. "Dad, why are you dressed up?" I was wearing a button-down and the jacket. I told him I had a few errands to run before the restaurant. He shrugged and grabbed his bag, and I drove him over without saying much. He got out, waved once, and disappeared through the front door. I sat in the truck after he went inside. I thought about what happens if I say nothing tonight. I'd done this calculation before, in pieces, but I hadn't sat with the whole thing until now. So I ran it clean. If I stay quiet, the Martin household reserve keeps running. My $1,200 a month keeps posting, every month, like it always has. My parents keep access. Kyle and Sandra keep the arrangement where their financial shortfalls become the account's problem, which means my problem. The kitchen gets redone. The next debt gets cleared. And somewhere down the line there's another truck, another gift, another moment where my father reaches into his jacket for Brandon and comes up with a gift card for Liam. And Liam will be there for all of it. Watching. Going quiet the way he always does. That was the part I kept coming back to. Not the money. What I couldn't let stand was the $10 McDonald's gift card next to the car keys, the decision behind it. My father had looked at both boys and made a deliberate choice about what each one was worth, in front of 12 people, on their shared birthday. If I said nothing, that choice became the official record. I thought about the risks on the other side. Frank would be humiliated. Renee would cry. Sandra would call me cruel for ruining the dinner. The family would fracture. That was real, and I wasn't pretending otherwise. But I kept arriving at the same place. Silence always compounds. You pay it in installments, and you don't notice until the balance is something you can't cover anymore. I pulled out of the driveway and headed toward Luigi's. I was 40 minutes early. I was in the parking lot, engine off, envelope in the inside pocket of my jacket, when my phone buzzed. My father. A text. "Can't wait for tonight. Real proud of these boys." These boys. I put the phone in my pocket. I picked up the envelope from the passenger's seat. I got out of the truck. There was nothing left to think about. I walked through the front door of Luigi's, and asked the hostess for the back banquet room. I found our table. I sat down, and I waited. The first hour of the dinner was normal. That's the part people don't expect when I tell this story. It wasn't tense from the start. The food was good. The room was warm. My aunts and uncles were laughing about something at the far end of the table. Brandon was loud the way he always is. Liam sat next to me and ate his pasta and didn't say much. My father worked the table. That's the only way I know how to describe it. He moved through the conversation the way he always does in public, easy, generous, cracking the right jokes at the right moments. He'd always been good at this. It was part of the reason it had taken me so long to look at the account. I kept my hands in my lap. The envelope was in my jacket on the back of my chair. After the main course, my father tapped his glass and stood up. The table settled. He smiled and started talking about the boys, about growing up, about what it meant to turn 16. He talked about how proud he was. He looked at Brandon when he said it. He looked at Liam when he said the word family. There's a difference between those two things, and everyone at that table could feel it, even if nobody was going to name it. Then he reached into his jacket. He pulled out a small card and leaned across the table and held it out to Liam with both hands, like it was something ceremonial. "For you, buddy." Liam took it. A $10 McDonald's gift card. He turned it over once the same way he'd turned it over at the beginning of this story. My father was already reaching back into his jacket before Liam had finished reading it. He set a set of keys on the table in front of Brandon. Let them land with a soft clink against the white tablecloth. "That Tacoma out front?" he said. "She's yours, son." The table erupted. Sandra made a sound I can't describe. Kyle started clapping. My mother had her hands pressed together under her chin. 12 people in the room, everyone looking at Brandon, the noise filling up exactly the way my father had planned. I let it run for about 10 seconds. Then I reached into my jacket. I set the manila envelope on the table and opened it. I didn't stand up. I didn't raise my voice. I said, "Before we move on, I want to share something with the family." The clapping stopped. I took out the bank printout and smoothed it flat on the tablecloth. And I started reading. October, $9,500. Auto dealership. I looked up once, then back down. Brandon's truck. Frank opened his mouth. "I'm not done." February, $3,000. Home improvement supplier. The kitchen remodel. I paused. "The one you told me you and Mom were covering yourselves." The table was very quiet. June, $800 to a creditor. Kyle's account. I placed the printout face up on the table. The account this came from is the Martin Household Reserve. Over 18 months, I deposited $21,600 into it. My parents deposited $4,800 combined. I let that sit. 82% of that account was mine. My mother said my name. I took out my phone and pulled up the screenshot. I read it once, flat. "Yes, we needed it, and we knew you wouldn't mind." I set the phone down. Then I took out the second document and placed it on the table in front of Liam. A vehicle title. His name at the top. 2018 Toyota Tacoma. Paid in full. "There's a truck on Moreau Street," I said. 2 miles from here. Keys are in the envelope. Liam looked at it the way you look at something when you're trying to decide if it's real. I turned to my father. "I don't have a problem with you loving Brandon. I have a problem with you spending my money to do it and handing my son $10 in the same breath." I picked up my fork. The Martin Household Reserve is closed. It has been for about 10 minutes. Then I sat down. The room stayed quiet. Someone set a glass down at the far end of the table. My father was still standing. He looked at the printout. He looked at Liam's title. He looked at me. Then he sat down too. My father left the dinner without speaking to me, not dramatically. He stood up about 20 minutes after I sat down, said something quiet to my mother, and walked out. Renee followed. She looked back at me once from the doorway and didn't say anything. Sandra texted me the next morning. "You really couldn't let it go for one night?" I set my phone face down on the counter and didn't reply. Kyle said nothing, not that night, not after. The man whose debt had been cleared from my account, who had split the venue cost with me like we were starting from the same place, had nothing to say. I noted that and moved on. A few aunts and uncles reached out privately in the days that followed. Different messages, same idea. We always wondered about that account. I thanked them and kept it short. Monday morning, I called the bank and removed myself from the Martin Household Reserve. I transferred the balance I could recover and sent my parents a short email that evening. "I've removed myself from the account." The backup bank stays mine. I didn't ask for a response. Liam picked up his truck that Sunday. I drove him to the storage lot on Moreau Street and handed him the keys. He stood there for a moment, running his hand along the side panel, checking the bed, the way you do when something is actually yours and you're still figuring that out. Then he turned around. "Dad, you didn't have to do that." "I know," I said. We drove to the hardware store after. He took his truck. I took mine. We met in the parking lot and drove home separately. The Martin household reserve is closed. The backup bank is mine. My son has a truck with his name on the title. Paid in full. QC block. Estimated total word count to 4,050 words. Central injustice clear in opening. Yes, $10 gift card versus car keys. Same grandfather, same account, same table. Jacob identified by name, role, and financial contribution within first 230 words. Primary lever, authority dramatized. Yes, bank transaction printout read aloud at the table, line by line. Vehicle title placed physically in front of Liam. Renee's text read verbatim as written confirmation. Public climax clear. Yes, Luigi's banquet room. 12 witnesses. Jacob reads the reserve history aloud, delivers Liam's title, delivers closing statement to Frank, sits down. Point of no return strong. Yes, Frank's real, proud of these boys text in the parking lot. Jacob puts phone away, picks up envelope, gets out of truck. There was nothing left to think about. Receipts planted and paid off. Yes, bank records planted. Section 3, assembled Section 4, deployed Section 8. Renee's text planted Section 4, read aloud, Section 8. Tacoma title planted Section 6, delivered Section 8. Backup bank planted Section 2, revealed Section 6, paid off Section 8 and 9. Motif, symbol with payoff. Yes, manila envelope planted. Section 1. Filled Section 6, opened Section 8. $10. McDonald's gift card appears. Sections 1, 6, 7, 8. Paid in full introduced Section 6. Closing word of script. Minimum 3 hard mini cliffs at macro transitions. Yes. That's when I stopped checking and started reading. Not even Liam. I found our table. I sat down. And I waited. Antagonist with 2+ villain strikes. Yes. Strike 1, $9,500 taken without consent, framed as obvious family decision. Section 3. Strike 2. 50 venue split with Kyle, whose debt Jacob just funded. Section 5. Iconic, quotable lines. Yes, the Martin household reserve is closed. It has been for about 10 minutes. I don't have a problem with you loving Brandon. I have a problem with you spending my money to do it and handing my son $10 in the same breath. No convenient twist or illogical payoff. Yes, all receipts self-assembled by Jacob over 11 days. Backup bank established 6 years prior. Truck purchased from Jacob's own separate funds. No witnesses, no outside intervention, no coincidence.